For more on the talks, Peter Gleick joins us from Berkeley, California. He's a climate scientist at the Pacific Institute, a research nonprofit that focuses on freshwater issues. He's also a member of the US National Academy of Sciences. Great to have you on the program today, Peter. Essentially, at its core, this crossroads is about how much poorer nations will get from richer nations to deal with climate change. What are your thoughts on where it's at?
So there's a tremendous amount of frustration going on in Baku over the current COP. This is the 29th COP. There's frustration within the meeting and also outside of the meeting about these agreements, about how much money is going to be available for developing countries to both reduce emissions of greenhouse gases and slow climate change, but also now to deal with the unavoidable consequences of climate change. The amount of money that's been offered so far in this first set of proposals is way below what's needed. It's way below what much of the developing world understands is going to be required. And that's part of the frustration. That's part of the walkout that you mentioned at the beginning of both the developing nations, but also the small island nations that are most vulnerable here.
And many of the island nations were the leaders that walked out on these meetings. Of course, these are the countries most affected by rising sea levels. One observer in that group pointed out that considering inflation, the new goal is a 30% reduction on the previous agreement amount of $100 billion annually that runs out next year. Can you talk a little bit about how much leverage these smaller nations have?
Well, that's right. So the amount that was offered is relatively small. It's not a big increase in absolute value. And a lot of that money has already been committed, so it's not much of not much progress. These countries do have some leverage. There has to be agreement among all of the countries about the final statement, about the final numbers. And so by walking out, they're saying, look, we can't agree to these weak contributions. And hopefully, as I think we're starting to see, that will have the developed regions offer more money coming forward. I would also note China and India, for example, are listed as developing nations because of an old agreement. But China has offered a lot of money separately for kinds of climate adaptation and climate reduction. So there is some more money available, but we're going to have to see a lot more if we're going to make progress on the very serious impacts we're seeing.
It's not all bad news. One deal has passed, the Carbon Markets Agreement. That's where countries can agree to buy credits that have lots of trees to store carbon. This is a sort of form of offsetting emissions, I believe. That's a positive step in the right direction. But if this major deal is not made or met, what does that mean for the work on climate change moving forward?
Well,
and
so
for these countries. Sorry.
Yeah, so the frustration that a lot of countries are feeling and a lot of people are feeling about these agreements is that none of these agreements over the 29 COPs that we've seen have really produced enough positive action to slow the rate of climate change to the extent that's necessary. It would be nice if there was an agreement coming out of COP29. It would be better if it was stronger. But I'm afraid that we're still not making the progress that has to be made.
All right, we'll leave it there. Really appreciate your time. Peter Gleick for us there.